Hello everyone, I'm Johnny Chang and I am the founder of the World of Waterfalls. And in this video, I'm going to talk about Lulumahu Falls, which is one of the finest waterfalls you're going to find on the island of Oahu. And I'm going to tell you how to do this hike without trespassing and getting into trouble. So Lulumahu Falls has had a bit of a history with trespassing issues. And as a matter of fact, when we first visited Oahu back in January 2007, there was a group of hikers that were caught trespassing, ordered to pay a fine, and even ordered to show up in court, even though they were living out of state. Now, recently, the Honolulu Board of Water Supply, who are the managers of the private property that you are crossing through to get to the waterfall, they started issuing online permits, which you can purchase, then print out, and then bring with you should somebody be there checking for the permits. That said, even if you have the permit in hand, you could still be trespassing if you don't stay on the sanctioned trail. And so I'm about to tell you about that sanctioned trail.
So as you get out of your car from this clearing, you'll actually see that you'll be immediately greeted with, this, what I'm calling the hunter's entrance, where there is some fencing, a little opening, and as well as some signage, basically saying that you are entering the, this Honolulu watershed, forest reserve. And now, while this path may be the most obvious way to go, I've found that you can actually avoid doing this path, and I'll explain shortly why, by going to the right, not entering as you're facing this hunter's entrance. Follow the clearing, the open clearing on your right, heading back to the old poly highway. Then when you get to the old poly highway, go left and go along the poly highway, and just a few paces later, you will see a much wider road fronted by this fence. And it is this road that you'll want to take to the Lulumahu Falls. And oh, by the way, the hunter's entrance that you were greeted with at the start of the, in that clearing area, it ultimately dumps you back onto this road as well. Now, I mentioned that you may want to avoid doing the bamboo path, especially if you're not familiar with the area, even though it's probably the most obvious way to go because it's basically right in front of you at the clearing. And the reason for this is because, once you go through the hunter's path, you'll immediately find yourself right in the thick of a bamboo forest or a bamboo grove. And it can be a bit claustrophobic and disorienting, especially because there are false trails going this way and that, which the thing with these false trails is they're all unsigned. They all seemingly equally as used as the other path. So it's really hard to tell for the people unfamiliar with this area which way to go. And I suspect this is how people can get into trouble. So that's why I advocate for, just sticking out in the open. You don't have to do this hunter's entrance because it goes back to the big road anyways if you did it right. But if you took one of these false paths, you'll find that it'll actually lead you to some fencing that the Honolulu Board of Water Supply have erected to essentially keep people out of what is an active work area. And that said, people have found a way through, and I suspect that these are old trails to get you to Lulumahu Falls, mostly because people have probably found it easier to follow landmarks. So, if it's a private property, there's fencing, there's signage, there's a road, there's some infrastructure. It's much easier to identify these things and know what to do than it is to try to navigate your way through a thick jungle where it's easy to get turned around or follow false paths. You're not quite sure if you have to go this way or that way. So, it's just one of those things where you really have to watch out. It's really easy to get lost here. And if someone does decide to enforce the private property and whatnot, it is quite easy to get into trouble trespassing, going places you're not technically supposed to be. And as a matter of fact, this is why I felt compelled to make this video, just to sort of steer you on the right path. Because after all, I mean, I myself followed some of these paths and went the wrong way, and it was only when I was on my way out did I realize, oh, okay, this is how you're supposed to do it. And I suspect this is how the authorities here would want you to do it as well. Okay, so assuming that you are now on this wide open path, you went past the fence, and even if you went through the hunter's trail, you got dumped back onto this road. So you basically follow this wide open road and follow it all the way down to its bottom. Now, when I first did this hike, there was this false trail. I actually went left on this trail before, because I mean, when you look at this picture, you'll see that, yeah, that left trail looks just as open. It looks just as sanctioned. There's even some of those pink ribbons that went that way too. Those pink ribbons being, kind of hints to say, oh yeah, go this way, especially when it's thick jungle and whatnot. You're not quite sure if you're going the right way or not. Now, the problem with going this way is that it eventually leads you to some water piping and some fencing. And when I first did this hike, I did go this way. I did have to go around the fence to keep going. And that's when I found out, that's when I ended up in this clearing that eventually led me up this ramp that took me onto this road where there's this reservoir and some, I don't know if it's a water tower or whatever you call that. But the bottom line is, technically, as I was standing here behind the fencing, I was technically trespassing here. Whether you know it or not, the authorities may or may not be sympathetic. But the bottom line is, this is why you don't really want to go this way. And you want to just stick to the road, ignore those false paths, and that road will ultimately take you, back into the jungle at the bottom, where you're going to see this, I don't know what you call this. It's like a concrete water channel. It's kind of a little notch that lets some of the stream water through. But you're going to basically cross over this concrete, and then you're going to get right into the thick of the jungle, and encounter more bamboo and more foliage. Essentially, getting back into claustrophobia, I guess, for lack of a better term. Okay, so beyond this concrete water channel, you're now in pretty much the thick of the jungle. And this may be perhaps the most confusing and most disorienting part of the hike. So, you're going to see, hopefully, a lot of use trails, because this is becoming an increasingly popular hike. And so you can kind of make out where people have been before, generally where there's some sliver of clearing, or instead of like animal trails or whatnot, they're actually human trails, I guess. You can look for things like footprints, but you should especially pay attention to see if you see any of these pink ribbons that people leave tied to branches and to trees. And so as you get through this sort of thick jungle, there may be some moments of clearing and maybe some sort of obvious paths before it gets back into the jungle and whatnot. But eventually, you may come upon a clearing that looks like this, where there's, some graffitied up sign and some more fencing, and, it's on the other side of that fencing that would be the sort of the active working area that the authorities don't want you to go. And that's fine. The path still continues, not past this fencing, but it still continues more or less along the fencing. And you will continue to follow more of these pink ribbons that you may, as hints. And eventually, you're in the right place when you see this dam with this sort of man-made waterfall tumbling by it. That essentially starts the actual stream hiking, where you will crisscross the Lulumahu stream several times. But at least, when you get to this point, you know that you will have gone past sort of the ambiguous, am I trespassing, am I not trespassing part. And as a matter of fact, even if you were to take the old paths that did trespass into the Honolulu BWS property, it will eventually dump you to the same trail, right? Maybe not right in front of this, but quite just a few paces, before this dam. Okay, so once you get past this dam, you are pretty much stream hiking, and here it may be obvious, it may not be obvious which way you have to go, but in general, you know that you do have to go follow this stream upstream all the way to the waterfall. Now that said, because it's kind of almost a choose your own adventure kind of a thing. There's a lot of trails going this way and that. It can be a little bit disorienting about, should I stay dry? Should I cross the creek? At least you know that as long as you are heading in an upstream direction along the Lulumahu stream, you will eventually end up at the waterfall. And even if, you didn't take the right way, quote unquote, all it means is just, it might be a little bit rougher, a little more bouldering, a little more, getting wet, stream scrambling. It could get a little more muddier or ducking under trees and whatnot. I mean, obviously, if you, get lucky or you kind of know where you're going or you're really good at reading the clues around you, there are used trails that do make this hike a bit easier. But again, unless you've been here before or you're really good at, paying attention to what's around you, it's quite easy to sort of go off and away from, the quote unquote easier paths and degenerate into stream scrambling. But the bottom line is, as long as you're generally going upstream, you'll eventually get to the Lulumahu Falls. But there is a caveat to this, and that is that, because you are always constantly either in the stream or around the stream, it's definitely one thing you really need to be aware of is the likelihood of flash flooding, which, if you get a wall of water that suddenly grows the level of the creek, you could get washed away and killed. And this is what kills a lot of people in Hawaii year after year. And it doesn't even have to be raining immediately in this spot, but if it's heavily raining upstream, guess where all that water's going? It's got to go down the drainage and eventually, if you happen to be caught in here, down to you. And you do not want that to happen to you if you want to live to tell about it. So definitely, before you even set out on this hike, definitely pay attention to the weather. Pay attention to your surroundings, even before starting out with this hike, because if there is heavy rain in the forecast, boy, you really don't want to be here. So after about a half mile of going upstream along the Lulumahu stream, you will eventually end up at the foot of the Lulumahu Falls, which by most people's estimations, from what I've seen out in the literature, is about 50 feet. However, there are actually more hidden tiers further upstream of this 50-footer that you're standing in front of. And, I don't think that, most, people doing this hike are going to see it unless they use a drone or something to actually fly further upstream and see the rest of the tiers of the Lulumahu Falls. But as you can see, you're pretty much surrounded on three sides by very steep walls. So it's definitely, and the pool itself it's maybe about knee to waist deep. So it's not exactly a swimming hole, but it is a pretty decent spot to wade and cool off. That being said, because you are surrounded by steep walls and whatnot, there is a chance of, rock slides, rock falls, as well as the ever-present danger of flash flooding. So it's not exactly a place that you'd want to linger around for too long, unless you know for sure it's a good day or something. But as this place becomes more and more popular, you can definitely expect to be sharing this with quite a few other people. And as a matter of fact, when I did the hike, I was the first person here because I got an early start. But when I came back out, I encountered plenty more people, both the trespassing way and the non-trespassing way. And so that kind of gives you an idea of how, popular this place is becoming. And as more and more people, become aware of it, because you're seeing more and more videos on YouTube and more websites, devoting literature to this waterfall, the visitor numbers are only going to increase. So once you're done with the Lulumahu Falls, once you had your fill of this place, then you basically just go back the way you came. Again, the pink ribbons will help you, but now you're pretty much following, the path downstream. And really, the landmark to pay attention to is you want to keep going downstream until you get to the familiar dam, where you started the Lulumahu stream scramble to begin with. And once you get past that dam and waterfall, then you want to, follow the pink ribbons on the more obvious paths downstream that will eventually take you back down to that concrete channel and back to that wider road that you can follow back to the old poly highway and that clearing where you left your car to begin with.
So that's it for this video. If you like the contents of what you've seen and would like to see more from the World of Waterfalls YouTube channel, please hit the like or subscribe button, which is the thumbs up button down below. That will subscribe you to the World of Waterfalls YouTube channel so you can see more stuff like this. And it also lets me know that it's certainly worth doing more of these kind of things. And if you got any questions, comments that you want to reach out to me, you can also leave them down below in the YouTube comments. And that's pretty much it. I'm Johnny Chang, founder of the World of Waterfalls, and always remember, be safe, have fun, be responsible, and keep on chasing waterfalls.